Yeah, so we spoke with a neighbor today who I hadn't spoken to yet, who lives right around the corner from Nancy, very, very close, has lived here for a long time, knew Nancy, they used to walk together. And she had a very interesting story, Jesse, because she says she saw a suspicious man walking in the direction of Nancy's house sometime around February 11th, which is a very significant date because that is the date that we know FBI agents were asking other neighbors if they had any Ring camera footage from that day. Listen to what she told me, Jesse.
So this is my window that I'm getting ready in the morning, and I saw him out there. So I couldn't make out his face. He was in kind of street clothes, not shoes that you'd walk in, and he had a baseball hat really low, and he was kind of hunched over, and he was kind of looking around, and he just didn't fit. And he wasn't going terribly quickly like a normal person that's getting exercise. He was kind of going slowly, and when he walked by this street, he really took a long look at it.
And I actually misspoke. I said February 11th. I actually meant January 11th. So it would have been a couple of weeks before Nancy went missing on February 1st. And all the neighbors in this, it's the kind of neighborhood, they know everybody. They know, if someone doesn't look like they're normally here. It's that kind of a place. So that really, really stood out to her. And she says she has since talked to the FBI about it.
You know what's so interesting? I'm really happy you did that interview. Sometimes we don't think about what's that community going through. Obviously, there are those who knew and loved and care about Nancy, but they have been at the focus of this for weeks. They've been living through this for weeks on top of the fact they were probably incredibly nervous in the first few days about their safety in the community. Which brings me to an overarching point. What is happening in the overall investigation as far as you can see? Is it winding down? Hopefully not. Are they still canvassing? I read a report, maybe there's no more cadaver dogs out. Are they at a roadblock right now? Are there things going on behind the scenes? What can you tell us?
Well, we're hoping that there are things going on behind the scenes, Jesse. She had something really interesting, though, to tell me, that neighbor. Her sister also lives in the neighborhood, Jesse, just a few blocks away. And she says that the FBI came to her sister's house. 2 FBI agents came inside, wanted to look in her garage, and that her sister was suspicious that they were actually real FBI agents. This was a couple of weeks ago. So her sister called 911 after they left and said, look, I think I have a strange feeling about these FBI agents that showed up. Turns out like 7 detectives show up, more FBI agents, and they say, yeah, you're right. We don't think those were real FBI agents. They end up doing this massive investigation in her house. They're fingerprinting. They're there for 4 hours. They take her DNA. After all of that, they say, actually, we just now realized that they were FBI agents, which just kind of shows that there were some miscommunications happening in the beginning. Listen to what she said about that, Jesse.
So she called 911, and within 15 minutes, 10 minutes, there were 7 police cars, 4 FBI agents, said it wasn't the FBI. She was terrified. They swabbed her, fingerprinted the entire house.
They swabbed her mouth.
They swabbed her mouth.
Her DNA, wow.
Yeah, and then were there till the middle of the night, and then just left, and she was terrified. So the next day, at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she got a call from the large group of FBI agents that were there and said, oh yeah, by the way, that woman was an FBI agent. We don't really know who the guy was, but she was, so you're fine.
So what a strange situation, Jesse, that they took it so seriously that they spent half the night at her house investigating whether it was fake law enforcement. Come to find out, they just didn't realize that it actually was the FBI, apparently. Just a very, very strange story.
Why am I not surprised by this? I mean, part of the narrative of this whole case is a question mark over the investigation, the back and forth between the Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI jurisdiction, who's leading it.
The night investigators turned their attention toward a vehicle connected to the inner circle of Nancy Guthrie was the moment the entire investigation seemed to shift direction. For weeks, detectives had been searching for something, anything, that could explain how an 84-year-old woman could vanish from the quiet safety of her own home without leaving behind the kind of evidence investigators usually rely on. There were no shattered windows. No loud disturbance reported by neighbors. No clear sign that a violent confrontation had taken place. Yet Nancy was gone, and the silence surrounding her disappearance felt almost deliberate, as if someone had carefully removed the pieces that would normally tell the story of what happened inside that house. But every investigation eventually reaches a moment when the focus narrows, when detectives realize that one object, one timeline, or one overlooked detail might hold the key to unlocking the mystery. In this case, that moment arrived when investigators began examining a vehicle connected to someone within Nancy's extended family circle. What they hoped to find inside that vehicle was not necessarily proof of a crime. Instead, they were searching for context. Small fragments of information that might reveal where someone had been, what they had been doing, and whether their movements aligned with the timeline investigators had painstakingly built from surveillance cameras, witness statements, and digital records. Because in investigations like this, vehicles often become silent witnesses. They carry traces of the places they've been. Fibers, dust, digital navigation logs, and even microscopic particles can tell investigators stories that people sometimes cannot. And when detectives realized that examining this particular vehicle might provide insight into the hours surrounding Nancy's disappearance, the investigation entered an entirely new phase. I want to welcome you to the channel. We look for the truth in the shadows of cold cases and closed files. If you value this kind of deep dive investigation, please consider subscribing. And as we begin this journey together, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Whether you're joining us from the United States, Canada, Australia, or anywhere else in the world, leave a comment below. It helps us remember that these stories, though local, touch hearts across the globe. When detectives process a vehicle connected to an investigation, they do not simply open the doors and glance around. The process is methodical, slow, and extremely precise. Forensic technicians approach the vehicle as though it were a sealed environment that may contain hidden traces of the past. They photograph every angle before touching anything. They document the condition of the seats, the position of objects inside, and even the dust patterns on the dashboard. These details might appear insignificant to an outside observer, but investigators know that the smallest inconsistency can sometimes reveal a story that no one has spoken aloud. The first step is often to establish the recent history of the vehicle. Modern cars record enormous amounts of digital information. Navigation systems store location data. Infotainment systems record when phones connect through Bluetooth. Even the engine computer can sometimes reveal when the vehicle was started or how far it traveled during specific periods of time. By downloading this data, analysts can construct a timeline that shows where the vehicle may have been and when. Detectives compare that digital timeline with the timeline they have already built around Nancy's disappearance. If the two timelines align in unexpected ways, investigators begin asking new questions. But digital records are only one piece of the puzzle. Forensic technicians also search the physical interior of the vehicle for trace evidence. They vacuum carpets using specialized filters designed to capture microscopic fibers and particles. They examine seat fabric under bright lights that reveal substances invisible under normal conditions. They swab surfaces where skin cells might have been left behind. These samples are then sealed and sent to laboratories where analysts attempt to identify their origin. Sometimes the results reveal nothing unusual. Other times they provide new leads that investigators must carefully examine before drawing conclusions. The trunk area of a vehicle often receives special attention during this process. Storage compartments can contain soil, plant material, or debris that reveals where the vehicle may have traveled recently. A small cluster of leaves caught in a corner of the trunk might indicate that the vehicle was parked near a wooded area. Fine grains of sand could suggest a stop near a beach or construction site. Each sample becomes part of a larger puzzle investigators attempt to assemble piece by piece. While the forensic team focuses on physical evidence, detectives continue their interviews with people connected to Nancy's life. They ask about routines, relationships, and recent events that might help explain why investigators are examining certain leads. These interviews are not confrontational by default. Instead, they are designed to gather information and identify inconsistencies in timelines. Investigators compare what one person remembers with what another person reports, searching for the moments when the two accounts diverge. Because in complex cases, the truth often reveals itself through the small gaps between different versions of events. As the examination of the vehicle progresses, investigators also review surveillance footage from areas the vehicle may have traveled through. Cameras positioned at intersections, parking lots, and businesses often capture vehicles passing by at specific times. Analysts match the appearance of the vehicle with timestamps from these cameras, gradually mapping its movements across the city during the hours surrounding Nancy's disappearance. Sometimes the footage confirms what someone already claimed. Other times it raises questions that detectives must explore further. For Nancy's family and the broader community, the investigation has become a painful waiting game. Every new lead raises hopes that answers may finally be within reach. Yet investigators know that rushing to conclusions can damage a case. Evidence must be verified, timelines must be confirmed, and every possibility must be examined before detectives present their findings publicly. Because in the end, the goal is not simply to solve a mystery. It is to uncover the truth in a way that can withstand scrutiny from courts, investigators, and the public alike. And as detectives continue examining the evidence connected to that vehicle, they remain focused on a single question that has haunted this case from the very beginning. What exactly happened to Nancy Guthrie on the night she disappeared, and which clues hidden within the ordinary objects of everyday life might finally reveal the answer? The examination of the vehicle continued under bright forensic lights as investigators worked methodically through every inch of its interior. What many people don't realize is that forensic analysis rarely produces dramatic discoveries in a single moment. Instead, it unfolds slowly, through layers of careful observation and documentation. Each particle collected from the vehicle was sealed, labeled, and catalogued before being sent to the laboratory. Investigators understood that the answers they were searching for might not appear immediately, but somewhere within those microscopic samples could be clues that would eventually clarify what happened during the hours surrounding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. While the forensic team worked inside the controlled environment of the laboratory, detectives continued building the broader picture of Nancy's final days. They reconstructed her schedule as precisely as possible, speaking again with people who had interacted with her during the week before she vanished. They examined phone records, looking for the last incoming and outgoing calls. They studied digital timestamps from household devices that might indicate when lights were turned on or off, when doors were opened, or when someone moved through the house. Each of these details added another piece to the timeline investigators were assembling. The purpose of such a detailed reconstruction is not simply to know what happened but to understand when the pattern of ordinary life was interrupted. In many investigations, that moment of disruption becomes the key turning point in the entire case. Detectives reviewed security footage from surrounding streets once again, slowing down recordings and enhancing images in the hope of catching movements that may have been overlooked earlier. Even a brief appearance of a vehicle at the end of a street or a person walking past a distant camera could become important if it aligned with the timeline investigators were building. Analysts studied shadows, headlights, and reflections to determine the direction of travel for vehicles captured on camera. When these observations were combined with traffic patterns and witness statements, investigators could sometimes reconstruct routes taken during the critical hours of the night. At the same time, specialists examined the digital data extracted from the vehicle itself. Modern cars store far more information than most people realize. Navigation systems can record previous destinations. Bluetooth connections can reveal when phones entered or left the vehicle. Even the engine control module can sometimes show when the car was started, stopped, or driven certain distances. By comparing this information with the broader investigative timeline, analysts hope to confirm whether the vehicle had been present near any locations connected to Nancy's disappearance. Detectives approached these findings cautiously. In any investigation, data must be interpreted carefully. A vehicle appearing near a location does not automatically explain why it was there. There could be perfectly ordinary reasons for its presence. That is why investigators cross-reference every discovery with other sources of evidence. Witness statements, digital records, and forensic traces must all align before detectives begin forming stronger conclusions. Meanwhile, the community surrounding Nancy's home continued to follow the investigation closely. People who had known her for years struggled to understand how such a quiet and familiar place could suddenly become the center of a mystery. Some neighbors shared memories of seeing Nancy tending to everyday routines, walking outside during the day, greeting people who passed by, or simply enjoying the calm rhythm of her neighborhood. Those memories made her absence feel even more profound. For her family, the uncertainty was the most difficult part. In missing person cases, time can feel suspended. Each day without answers stretches longer than the last. Yet investigators reassured them that the case remained active and that every piece of evidence was being examined with care. Law enforcement agencies often remind families that persistence is one of the most powerful tools in solving complex cases. Even when progress appears slow, the steady accumulation of information can eventually reveal the truth. Weeks after the vehicle examination began, the investigative team gathered to review the results of their findings. Laboratory analysts presented reports detailing the traces collected from the vehicle's interior. Digital specialists shared the data extracted from onboard systems. Detectives compared these findings with the timeline they had built from surveillance footage and interviews. Each department contributed its perspective, and together they evaluated what the evidence suggested, and just as importantly, what it did not prove. Some discoveries clarified certain movements during the days surrounding Nancy's disappearance. Others raised new questions that investigators would need to explore in greater detail. This is often how complex investigations evolve. One answer leads to another question, and each question opens a new direction for inquiry. Rather than closing the case immediately, the examination of the vehicle expanded the scope of the investigation, prompting detectives to revisit earlier leads and search for additional corroborating evidence. The team also considered whether other pieces of technology might hold useful information. Mobile phones, home security systems, and even nearby traffic sensors sometimes record data that can help fill gaps in a timeline. By combining these sources, investigators can sometimes trace the movements of individuals or vehicles across a much wider area than originally expected. As the months passed, the investigation continued moving forward step by step. Detectives remained committed to the idea that every detail mattered, no matter how small it seemed. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie had left behind a puzzle, and solving that puzzle required patience, collaboration, and an unwavering attention to evidence. Throughout the process, investigators maintained one guiding principle: conclusions must come from verified facts. Speculation may capture public attention, but only confirmed evidence can bring real answers and lasting justice. That is why detectives continued reviewing the vehicle data, the forensic samples, and the digital records again and again, searching for connections that might reveal what happened during the quiet hours when Nancy was last known to be home. And while the mystery remains unresolved, the investigation itself stands as proof that the search for truth has not stopped. Every new piece of evidence, every re-examined timeline, and every conversation with a witness brings investigators one step closer to understanding the events that unfolded that night. Cases like this remind us that the smallest detail, something easily overlooked, can eventually become the key that unlocks the entire story. The search for answers in Nancy Guthrie's disappearance continues, driven by the determination of investigators and the hope of those who want the truth to come to light. And perhaps somewhere within the evidence already collected, the clue that explains everything is waiting to be recognized. Until that moment arrives, the investigation moves forward with the same purpose it had on the very first day: to uncover what happened and ensure that the truth, whatever it may be, is finally revealed. If you've followed this story with us, thank you for taking the time to explore these difficult questions and examine the evidence step by step. Stories like this remind us why careful investigation matters and why every voice searching for truth can help keep a case alive. If you found this deep dive meaningful, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you never miss future investigations. And before you go, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What detail in this case stands out to you the most, and where in the world are you watching from tonight? Your engagement helps keep these stories in the public eye, and sometimes it's that continued attention that leads to the answers families have been waiting for.